Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Estate Market Report for August of 2022 for Morgan Hill, California. As we do each month, we're going to take a look at the most important numbers that give us insights into what to expect from the real estate market right here in Morgan Hill. Now, there have been a lot of interesting changes this month. In fact, looking at the overall market, from the county level, from that 10,000 foot view all the way down to our local cities, I would say that we are seeing a market in transition, and this is one of those first months where some of the things I've been predicting for a while are definitely showing up. Not so much for Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill is still being affected, but when we discuss what's happening in the broader market this weekend during the Coffee and Real Estate live chat, I think you're going to see that we've absolutely crossed over a line in terms of how the real estate market has transitioned. So if you'd like to take part in this weekend's Coffee and Real Estate, it happens at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. You can go to Facebook and find me. You can search for The Rebel Broker or White Lawn Sons Real Estate. Better to find it at soldbyrobert.com. Scroll down a little bit and you'll see a nice big image that says Coffee and Real Estate happening in a certain amount of days, hours, and minutes. Just follow that link to get to the Facebook Live page for me, and you'll be able to participate. Again, it's 10 a.m. this Saturday. I'd love to see you there. We take your questions. We discuss what's most top of mind for you as it relates to real estate. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have going on with these numbers. First thing we always look at is the total number of active listings, and we're comparing these to last year, the same time last year. And what I've done, just so that it's easier to see what's going on, I've grouped it. So you'll see that right here, that last column that's red is not this August. That's August of 2021. So this column and this column are the same numbers, right? So that's for August. Both of those are for August 2021. The only reason I put them right next to each other is so it's very easy to visually compare the month of August last year to this year. And as you can see, we've got a 28.1% increase in the total number of active listings. So that simply means if I'm a buyer, how many homes do I have to look at in this given month? How many homes did I have to view? And if you're a seller, it's an idea of how much competition do you have in terms of homes. So competition for sellers or options for buyers increased by 28.1% in August of 22 when compared to the same time last year. Now, if we go ahead and look at Morgan Hill new listings. Now, these are homes where the seller decided it's time for me to sell my home. They listed it, they put it on the market, and it appeared in August. So we can see that the amount of homes added to the marketplace is actually down when compared to the same time last year. We can see it's down 18.5%. We had 53 homes listed in Morgan Hill in the month of August of 2022, and in 2021, that was 65. So again, we're just comparing these two to each other in a year to year. But then in looking at the trend, you can see that we've had a pretty big drop off. As we look back to March, April, May, and June, we were really peaking in terms of folks listing their homes. That is not horribly unusual. We tend to see a drop after June. But the level of the drop is actually a little bit surprising. And we've pretty much stayed at that level since. We haven't really jumped back up. And then that makes sense. We should see fewer homes listed as we get further into the year. As we get into October, November, as we head into the holiday season, listings tend to fall off during that time frame. So that would be very normal. And you can see that same trend last year. If you look at October, November, December, you can see that from August, September, October, it was all relatively flat. And then we saw a drop in November and December. And as I said, that's pretty typical. And I think that's what we can expect. Okay, next on our list is total homes sold. Now, these are the number of homes that were sold in the month. And we can see that we had 52 homes sold in August of 2022. That's down from 62 homes sold in August of 2021. And again, that's these two columns right here. The red one being last year, the blue one being this year. And let's see, next on our hit parade here is average list price for August of 2022. Now, this one's a little different. I don't report this number the same way that most real estate agents do because I want it to be very relevant to people who are calibrating themselves to the market. So much of what a list price is is hinging on the expectations of the seller, right? When you sign that listing agreement in your living room or at the Starbucks or wherever you signed it with that real estate agent, you put a price on that listing agreement of this is what I want to sell my home for. So the expectation is being set. That's what this number is. This is not what the list price was at the time the home sold. This is the list price that was first entered into the multiple listing service. So if, let's say the price is dropped, let's say it's listed 3 months later, it's dropped. That is not what this number is. It's not the dropped amount. It is just that initial listing amount. Now we can see that it's up 12% from the same time last year, which is a way to calibrate yourself to expectations. And again, we are looking at these two as August of 2022 is the gold one and the August of 21 is the red one. Last year at this time, 1.339 million was sort of where things were going. 1.5 million is what we are seeing on average listed now. And the trend is interesting, but remember it fluctuates a little bit, but in all honesty, it's relatively flat since January of 2022. We tend to see a little bit more fluctuation in Morgan Hill numbers because there's a smaller sample size, right? We're going to see fewer homes listed. We saw we had 50 something homes listed. Places like San Jose or Santa Clara County in general get thousands, hundreds. So then that normalizes a little bit more to give you a better trend curve. So in terms of trying to determine what the trend is, it's actually been increasing since December of 2021 and peaking in May and June and sort of dropping a little bit here. What's interesting is how flat it was last year in 2021 and even declining a little bit as we headed into winter, which again is normal. The winter season, we would expect that kind of number to be true. All right, let's go ahead and look at average sales prices. Now, these are what homes actually have sold for. Again, and unfortunately this time, the colors are backwards. I apologize. So August of 2022 is the red one in this case, and that was 1.379 million is the average sales price. And from the same time last year, which was 1.325, so a 4.1% average sales price increase. What is interesting here to note is we're hitting numbers now that take us all the way back to November of last year. So it's an interesting drop when you look at the historical trend. Notice the trend that we saw where things were relatively flat, July, August, September into October, then November. Then things started to trend up until we peaked in July of 2022. And now we're starting to see this average number drop. So I find that interesting. We've been talking about this sort of pivot in the market for months. And we were first defining it as a reduction in the increase, right? We are the days of double-digit increases compared to the same time last year are gone. I'm sure some of you remember when I've done market analysis where we talked about how prices were up 12%, 14%, 18%, 20% in Morgan Hill in a given month compared to the same time last year. And now we're down to single digit of 4.1. And as we move, and at this time, given the fact we're talking about August numbers, and remember, the homes that closed in August, most of them sold in July because escrow takes about 30 days. So this is sort of the peak, and you would expect a bit of a decline after that. And as we go into winter, there will definitely be a decline. As you can see, that was sort of the trend last winter as well. It would not surprise me if in Morgan Hill, in a month coming up very soon, this turns into a negative number when compared to the same time last year. In other words, prices dropping compared to the same time last year. Okay, next. Morgan Hill percent of list price. And in this one, we are using what the price was at the time that it sold in calculating this. And this is basically just looking at what the list price was versus what it sold for. And expressed as a percentage. And again, apologies, I've got the colors backwards here. In August of 2021, we were at 105.7%. In August of 2022, we're at 99.4%, so 0.6% below asking price. That's overall a 6% drop from the same time last year, and it gives us a couple of insights. One, fewer multiple offer scenarios are coming in. And two, obviously, less competition. When you start to see these numbers go where they are, that tends to indicate that we're not seeing as many multiple offers and that buyers are getting into a better position to be able to find homes. What's also interesting, though, is when we compare this to sales prices, I think things like this tell us get ready for a change in that last number. Get ready for a change in what we see for sales prices. I think this is a little bit more of a leading indicator as we start to trend down on this particular data, on the percent of list price. I think that what we're going to see in the coming months is a continuing decline in list prices, sale prices for homes in Morgan Hill. Okay. Next, days on market. And this one's interesting also because of the historical trend that we're seeing here. Now, the days on market, again, at least the colors are right this time. They're both red, but one's the red that I've been concerned about. If we look at it, we can see, again here, we've got August of 2022. The month we're covering, the most recent month, is 28 days on the market. A year ago, that was 21 days. Now, why do we care about this now? Because for a long time, I have discounted the relevance of even tracking this number. You can see that in most cases over the last year, this number has been extremely low, under 15 or 16. And in those cases, it was low because real estate agents were deciding, or it was even, if you're looking at 15 and 16 thinking, well, even that seems like a long time. The days on market was being artificially defined by listing agents, meaning when they listed a house, they would say, we will not accept any offers till such and such a date, which was usually anywhere from 10 to 15 or 16 days after it was listed. So that was in order to have all the offers come in at the same time so they could leverage off of a multiple offer scenario, but it was also to give buyers plenty of time to be able to look at the property and potentially make an offer. So the trend that's interesting here is in July, we saw a huge jump, 35 days. And we discussed that in past reviews where it was simply selling off of properties that have been on the market for a very long time, multi-million-dollar properties that had 300 plus, 200 plus days on the market before they sold. We had two of those, I believe, in July. We had another similar scenario in August. But so more organically, if you were to draw a straight line between June of 2022, I can even draw it for you. So if you were to do that, going all the way back to here, I think that's what we are seeing. So my anticipation here, and let's ignore the August of 21 number there, but just as it relates to here, I think this is what we're seeing. I think as we move forward, we're going to tend to see that as the trend. I think days on market continues to increase. We are continuing to stockpile properties. We're not selling as many homes as we are listing. So we are going to naturally accumulate more homes. And as the months go on, that accumulated inventory is just going to increase. So given that, the market in Morgan Hill for buyers, sellers, and investors, I always like to try to leave you with what should you be bouncing around in your head given the latest information related to Morgan Hill market. One, if you're someone who's a seller or you've been thinking about selling, I think that it is a good idea to potentially accelerate your goals of selling now if you were someone who's going to sell in the next year or 2 years. I don't think you'd kick yourself if you ended up trying to take advantage of where the market is right now in Morgan Hill, still being higher than the same time last year and benefiting from that and pulling out that equity and making that big life move now rather than waiting for a down market. Now, for those of you who also check out my podcast, and you can find my podcast at Sold by Robert as well, you can also find it at therebelbroker.com. My last show on Monday, the title of the show was, 2023 is going to be a bloodbath for real estate. I believe that is true. There are just too many things in the mix here that are pointing towards a downturn and a credit collapse, really, from a lot of different sectors, from particularly the car sector, where folks have been overpaying for cars now for 2 years. But a lot of repossessed cars, a lot of weird things are potentially going to happen with a subprime auto loan scenario, and we all know what subprime is from the real estate world, where less than optimal borrowers have been getting loans, sometimes far above 100% of the value of the car. Again, that should sound super familiar from our real estate experience 12 years ago. But I think that could kick off a debt crisis that feeds a real estate debt problem, right? Because it's about people owning stuff, including their home. And when their debt scenario gets bad enough, it tends to negatively affect everything. Just like we saw with houses affecting cars, right? Suddenly cars were being repossessed and payments being stopped because of the real estate problem. Once we feed into bad credit, we just feed into bad credit, and I think bad things start to happen. But if you want more details on that and some of the articles and news that I laid out in that podcast, you can find it also on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. Just search for Rebel Broker. There's a video version and a podcast version, so whichever you prefer to consume, you can find there. All right. So for buyers, start your searches now. You don't necessarily have to buy today, but I think you're going to find that as the next upcoming months pass, it becomes better and better for buyers and investors. So this would be advice for both of those groups to get searches going for properties that make sense for you in terms of whether you want to live in it or you want to invest in it. And will also be a great way for you to see the evolution of prices over time until we get to that point where you feel like the math works for you and a new home or an investment property makes sense. Sellers, I think it's a strike while the iron's hot scenario. So I think the probability of you getting the best value for the sale of your home is likely now versus waiting a year or 2 years. I have no idea how long bad times might stretch out. All of next year feels like a good bet, and then moving beyond that, it would be tough to call. But I think if you had plans already to sell in the next year or two, doing that now would probably be smart. All right. Well, folks, I hope that this has been useful for you. As always, the goal is to leave more information on the table than I take up in your time. If you've got any questions about the Morgan Hill market, or you'd like to list your home, please, or buy a home here in Morgan Hill, I have all the tools needed to help you do that in the best way possible. And I even have a free instant online valuation tool that personally I think is better than most others out there on the internet at my website. So head on over to soldbyrobert.com. You can enter your address and get an instant home valuation there. So take advantage of that. Totally free. You don't have to talk to me. It's just a way for you to get that information and decide whether or not it makes sense for you right now to get a more in-depth property analysis, which I can do for you. All right, folks. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you all next time.